Chapter 10. It was Monday, the day where all the other dock workers, including Gabe, would be tired as they started the beginning of their week. But especially Gabe because of his protein deficiency. But still, he was super strong and always outworked the other workers. He lifted boxes and cans and stacks of things and put them in other places on the dock, all faster than them. So even on Mondays, he would be done with his work and could go on his lunch break at 10 a.m. instead of noon. Still though, he wouldn't be hungry yet, because earlier in the morning at his spacious, well-lit and tastefully appointed home, Gabe would sit in the window of his breakfast nook, wearing those pajama bottoms you see in catalogs with perfect bed hair and eating a large meal of steak and eggs and black coffee. Unless you're a vegetarian, in which case he'd be eating a bowl of tofu with soy milk. So at 10, he would always walk away from the docks with some time to kill. In this case, he went to the library. He walked in and instantly saw that all of the librarians were sort of uptight looking, but totally ready for action if he wanted. Most of the men in here had wimpy arms and backpacks. Then he saw the most gorgeous woman he'd ever seen. She had a cool tattoo on her arm, which was a mental signal that she was okay with sex having. She had short hair like a boy, but really it was just a way of saying that most regular girls with their long hair were stupid, and she was obviously better. She was smoking a cigarette forbiddenly out of the window, and she was reading some old genius person like Shakespeare. Gabe walked over and sat down in the chair across from her. The chairs were like little half couches, all soft and laid back and casual. Gabe reached over and picked up the nearest book next to him, which accidentally happened to be a Cat Fancy magazine, even though that's obviously not really what he was into. The totally sexy chick looked up from her Shakespeare novel, then nodded towards the table on the other side of where Gabe took the magazine from. There was another book there. It was the Kama Sutra. Gabe picked it up and skimmed through it. It was a delicious book that showed the origins of sex, when men and women used to look plump and blobby with weird eyes before they evolved, and would make sex on flying carpets and rich tapestries, sometimes in public. Besides how weird they looked, those must have been the days. In modern times, people scuttled about wearing clothes and doing it in total secret without anyone watching. Sure, people claimed to make sex in the movies and stuff, but maybe it was all one big lie, and Gabe was the only man on Earth who actually knew how to do it. That would explain why everyone was so obsessed with jobs and entertainment and education and all the things that wasted time, instead of getting naked and doing the best thing ever invented. Maybe Gabe was the only one who knew the secret. That would explain it. Except for the fact that we were all here, which means that some people had to do it to make babies. Gabe got lost in thought, wondering if there was a third way that explained it all. The sexy chick named Larissa, because Gabe saw her library card, brushed her bare foot up against Gabe's leg. She looked deep into Gabe's eyes and whispered, 17. Uh-oh, that could be a problem. Gabe looked around to make sure there weren't any undercover cops. Nah, not these wimpy-armed freaks. Any self-respecting cop, even an undercover one, couldn't resist having a strong enough body to tackle a criminal if he was running away. These people looked like they couldn't even tackle a toddler. Gabe said okay, as long as she didn't tell anyone. She whispered back asking, tell anyone what? Gabe said tell anyone that she was 17. Then Gabe asked her when her birthday was. Maybe it was in a few minutes and he wouldn't have anything to worry about. She told him, no, page 17. Then she nodded at the book. Gabe turned to that page, she said. Holy godsend! The picture showed this totally perverted ancient couple doing this human helicopter thing, where the guy was the helicopter and the girl was the spinny thing on top. Gabe thought it was amazing that they thought of this, especially since there weren't even helicopters back then. Then Gabe wished that people were doing this more in the 70s. You could totally have a whole fleet of hippies making sex this way and flying over the skies of Vietnam. They would yell down, make love, not war. And all the people would look up and drop their guns and make love to the nearest person next to them. There would be world peace, plus humans could fly. It would be heaven on earth. The perverts on page 17 couldn't actually fly, of course. It's just what Gabe started to daydream about for a second. The important thing was that you could totally start sex in the normal way, then spin her around while doing it. Gabe was impressed that finally someone invented something that wasn't in his repertoire. Larissa asked Gabe if he'd ever browsed the shelves over in the romance section. There was a cart full of paperbacks in the aisle from all those books that people checked out to read about other people making sex instead of them doing it personally, and hadn't been put back on the shelves yet. It was perfect. They could peek over the top every once in a while to see if a SWAT team was coming, but otherwise they could just go for it. But sadly, there was a sign on the wall to be quiet because it was a library, so Gabe couldn't make his usual awesome manly sounds, and Larissa couldn't scream her brains out in ecstasy like she totally would have otherwise, it goes without saying. Gabe opened her up. She was an epic love tale, written by the most sexiest poet of all time. While going at it silently, like two pantomime clowns wrestling in a hermetically sealed chamber in front of an audience of deaf people, Gabe looked up for a moment and saw this book, Engorged Loins, among one of the other books on the shelf. That was weird. Then Gabe got distracted looking at some of the other titles: The Passion of Strangers, The Elements of Love, Fever Tits. Larissa stopped and asked him if something was wrong. Gabe dove back in and tried the helicopter thing, but that move is obviously better if both the people are flat across the ground instead of standing up. Larissa hit her head on the bottom shelf, and out spilled The Man Who Made Love to the World. The first sentence said, Francois, the best lover Paris had to offer in the history of its notorious history of lovemaking, set forth to solve the world's problems, one lover at a time. Gabe suddenly got this amazing idea. He came politely, like a man doffing his top hat and sprinkling some pearls on a respectable lady. Then he scooped up what should be the Bible to make the world a better place instead of that weird one we have now, ripped out the little metal security thingy inside, and left.